October in Texas. The oppressive summer heat begins to subside. Football is on all weekend, and, of course, the Texas State Fair is in full swing. And when I say the Texas State Fair, I mean the one that takes place in Fair Park in Dallas. No offense, South and East Texas State Fair, but you're not really comparable in size. One might say you're small Tex to our big Tex. I have recollections of attending the Texas State Fair as a kid, looking at the prized livestock, enormous produce, cars, and other exhibits while stuffing my face with anything that could be dunked in a deep fryer. What didn't catch my eye at the time, however, was the dominant architectural style of Fair Park, Art Deco. Seeing Fair Park today, I can't help but see it as a bit of a time capsule into the 1930s when many of these structures were built. I can't say I'm a huge fan of Art Deco aesthetics, but being a fan of history, I really appreciate how specific the design aesthetics is to its time period. When I see Art Deco, it immediately brings to mind 1920s and 1930s design. Its unique style and flair seems to have simply vanished in the post-World War II era, leaving us with its ghostly remains. This is Art Deco Dallas. First, we should talk a little bit about the history and design philosophy behind Art Deco. The name comes from the title of a French art exhibition held in Paris in 1925 called,
Exposition internationale des arts décoratifs.
Yeah, that. It should be noted that the term Art Deco didn't come into common usage until the 1960s, when it was used in the title of a book written by Beavis Hillier that was published in 1968. Honestly, given the incredibly broad influences that inspired Art Deco, lumping all the architecture, sculpture, painting, industrial and commercial appliances, jewelry, and so much more into a single category seems rather lazy. It's almost more of a reflection of the society at the time. After the brutality of World War I came a new sense of vigor and optimism during the Roaring '20s, stemming from technological innovations, peace and prosperity, and the cultural upheaval of jazz, Hollywood films, and flapper culture. The excesses of Art Deco were scaled back a bit due to the struggle of the Great Depression, and were largely gone by the onset of World War II in 1939. But for about 2 decades, its conspicuous flair and styling was present in all areas of society, and its products can still be seen today. In fact, you may already be familiar with the aesthetics without having known the name. From the movie The Great Gatsby to the aesthetic styling of Gotham City in various Batman movies and television shows, and even in video games such as BioShock, the influence is clear. Like I said before, that's why Art Deco interests me so much. It's a style specific to a time period, and in the aforementioned examples, the Art Deco aesthetics serves as the frame and backdrop from which the story is told. So what is it that makes Art Deco Art Deco? Well, as I stated earlier, its influences are broad, and its applications widespread. The art form is almost contradictory. From ancient influences in its ornate patterns, use of extravagant materials, and monumental style, to the sleek curves or blocky geometric shapes that hints of cubist influence, and the use of new materials like plastics, that point towards the future. Art Deco is an aesthetic style that looks to the future while integrating the luxury of the past. In addition, the increasing nature of mechanization and the diminished role of handcrafted goods made by skilled artisans gave a new breed of industrial designers the opportunity to manufacture goods like radios, furniture, silverware, and other consumer goods on a mass scale. It should be noted that the origins of Art Deco can be traced back to Europe, notably Germany, in the years preceding World War I. The Great War put a damper on artistic ventures as the world witnessed a new, brutal form of industrial scale destruction. After the war, France took the mantle of leading the Art Deco movement, as Germany and her artists were intentionally or unintentionally ignored and sidelined in an act of post-war retaliation. Art Deco's arrival to the United States was slow and gradual, and encountered plenty of resistance from people with more traditional tastes. Its adoption was mainly among the artistic elite and the wealthy with adventuresome spirits, who were quick to embrace this new movement. It's easy to forget today that the movement was once controversial and derided by many in society. Journalist and art critic Mary Fanton Roberts wrote about the modernist art movement. Modernistic art came like a parade, waving banners, shouting, laughing somewhat hysterically, at first ignoring the past, feeling the present, snatching at the future. It would stand alone. There must be no links anywhere. Take it or leave it, was the motto. And the result was that people were bewildered and antagonized, feeling their beautiful background of the past blotted out, and with nothing to look forward to but furniture and decoration that seemed determined to leave them without physical comfort or peace of mind. I really like this quote because its sentiments are so evergreen. Just replace the phrase modernistic art with something else, and it can be applied to numerous other movements throughout history and still feel relevant. I will admit to feeling this way at times too, when I see a new trend on the internet, with people behaving increasingly shamelessly for attention and followers. But as a fan of history, I can't help but wonder if this is the new norm, and that I've become the old man yelling at clouds. I've long believed this to be true, that times change, but people stay the same, and resistance to change has existed long before us, and will continue to exist long after we're gone. Getting back to the topic at hand, how did Fair Park in Dallas, a city far from the glamour of Paris, acquire such a collection of Art Deco buildings? It's easy to forget that early in the 20th century, Dallas was not nearly the large city it is today. Today, Dallas ranks in the top 10 most populated cities in the United States, but in 1930, it was the 33rd most populous city in the United States. I should hasten to add that the history of the State Fair of Texas didn't begin in the 1930s. In fact, it began in 1886, and hilariously enough, there were two competing events, the Dallas State Fair and the Texas State Fair, both fighting for attention and visitors. While both events were qualified successes, they had accrued debt from their competition and faced ruin if they did not join forces. Going forward, the State Fair of Texas and Dallas Exposition would become the State Fair. The origin of state fairs had long been agricultural in nature, and the idea was taken from smaller county fairs, in which farmers would bring their livestock and produce to compare with other farmers, while artisans, merchants, and inventors would sell their wares to visitors. On a larger scale, the World's Fair is an upscaled version of a state fair and involves multiple countries. As these fairs began to attract large numbers of visitors, other events, exhibitions, and the latest technology were introduced to a large audience. In a time before the internet, television, or even radio, this was the way to gain widespread recognition and fame. And so it was with the Texas State Fair. As the population of Texas boomed, and it went from a sparsely populated, ranching, and agricultural land to an increasingly urban environment. Likewise, the State Fair went from showcasing prize-winning livestock to entertainment, ranging from carnival rides, races, gambling, art exhibitions, technological demonstrations, and curiosities. Still, it never lost its original identity as an agricultural showcase. Fast forward to 1931. It's been 2 years since the stock market crashed, and times are tough. Savings are wiped out, as banks collapse under the weight of massive withdrawals. Consumer spending drops as unemployment rises, leading to more unemployment in a vicious cycle. By 1933, unemployment reached a staggering 25% of the workforce. Still, the Texas Centennial drew near, and in 1931, a 21-member Centennial Committee was formed to plan for 1936. Interestingly, Dallas was chosen to host the Centennial State Fair over other, more historically relevant cities, such as San Antonio or Houston, which figured more prominently in early Texas history. See my video on early Texas history. Dallas had seen explosive growth in the early 20th century thanks to the discovery of oil in East Texas. See my other video, The World's Richest Acre. And thanks to the existing facilities in Fair Park and a strong $9.5 million bid, Dallas managed to secure the rights to be the center of Texas's 100-year celebration. Because the financial burden for the Centennial was so heavy, management for the state fair was turned over to the Centennial Exposition Corporation for the years of 1935 and 1936. In exchange, the corporation agreed to assume the fair's financial obligations during their administrative period. In 1935, a year before the Centennial, local architect George Dahl was selected as the technical director of the exhibition and led a team of 100 architects, artists, sculptors, and artisans to renovate Fair Park for the big event. It took around 8,000 workers less than a year to renovate Fair Park at a total cost of about $25 million. The Centennial opened on June 6, 1936, with more than 177,000 people visiting the fair on opening day. The fair ran for 178 days, from June to November, and total attendance was about 6.3 million people. President Franklin Roosevelt made an appearance on June 12th and gave a speech in the Cotton Bowl Stadium.
My friends of Texas, I have come here today to bear the tribute of the nation to you on your 100th birthday, for you are 100 years young.
Other notable celebrities and entertainers were present as well, such as Duke Ellington and his band, who performed at the fair for 3 days. Actress Ginger Rogers, who had spent her childhood in nearby Fort Worth, Texas, also made an appearance and was crowned Centennial Queen. Sculptors Raul Josette and Lawrence Tenney Stevens were responsible for leading a team of craftsmen to create the monumental sculptures for the event. There are 6 female sculptures in the porticos along the esplanade that represent the 6 flags that flew over Texas. Spain, which shows a castle representing the Kingdom of Castile. Lions, to represent the Kingdom of Leon, both symbols which are represented on the Spanish coat of arms. France is shown with grapes, along with a fleur-de-lis, which has been traditionally seen on the French coat of arms. Mexico is represented by an eagle and a serpent, which calls back to an old Aztec legend that the great city of Tenochtitlan would be founded where they spotted an eagle devouring a snake atop of a cactus. The statue of the Republic of Texas wears a lone star as a crown. The Confederacy is represented by cotton. And, finally, the United States is represented by the bald eagle, which closely resembles the Great Seal of the United States. Much of the existing structures in Fair Park were built for the Centennial. Along the esplanade are buildings in which various themes and showcases were exhibited. Buildings such as the Transportation Building, the Petroleum Building, the Varied Industries Building, the Electrical and Communications Building, and at the end of the esplanade, across from the reflecting basin, is the State of Texas Building, now known as the Hall of State. By the way, as I stated earlier in this video, and some of my other videos, oil has been a big part of Texas history, and Sinclair Oil had assembled large animatronic dinosaurs that proved very popular with the public. Along the side of these buildings are large murals depicting the various themes of the Centennial, such as transportation, industry, communications, and technological advancements. These murals have been painstakingly restored, as with many of the buildings and the sculptures that have been ravaged by the passage of time. In fact, some of the sculptures you see today are complete modern recreations, as the originals have simply vanished or been discarded. These two sculptures, the tenor and the contralto, are modern recreations of the original, which have long since disappeared. The centerpiece of the esplanade is the Hall of State, which, today, serves as a shrine to Texas history. Outside the Hall of State is a statue of a Tejas warrior, which was made to represent the various native tribes that once called Texas home. There's a net in front of the sculpture to keep birds away. The doors of the Hall of State are very ornately decorated, with a distinct southwestern flair. Even the planters and light fixtures outside the Hall of State have a very distinctive Art Deco flair to them. Once inside the Hall of State, you'll be greeted by statues of historic Texan figures such as Stephen F. Austin, William B. Travis, and Sam Houston. There are rooms showcasing historical artifacts related to Texas history and a diorama of the Siege of the Alamo. But perhaps the most impressive room of all, inside the Hall of State, is the Great Hall, with its two large murals depicting Texas history from the time of Spanish rule to the birth of the Republic of Texas, and the other depicting Texas from statehood to modern times. At the end of the hall is a great seal, divided into 6 pieces, with each piece representing, again, the 6 nations that ruled over the land that is now the state of Texas. Outside of the Hall of State is the tallest structure in Fair Park, the Tower Building, formerly known as the Federal Building, with an eagle atop the tower to represent the United States. There are more Art Deco works elsewhere in Fair Park, but the Esplanade District of Fair Park boasts the highest concentration and best preserved works in the area. The work is distinctly Art Deco, with a certain southwestern flair, as Centennial Technical Director George Dahl put it. The style might be interpreted as modern, flavored with the condiments of Egypt and archaic Greece, and finally seasoned with the warmth and sunshine of the Southwest. I have to say, while there are signs of the wear and tear of time, the overall condition of Fair Park is actually quite impressive given the nearly 90 years that have elapsed since the Centennial. The buildings and murals have been exposed to the elements, the sun, and the scorching Texas heat, and require regular renovation and preservation efforts. In 1986, half a century after the exposition, Fair Park was added to the National Register of Historic Places. Today, the maintenance and preservation of this historic landmark is managed by the Dallas Parks Department. If you are a fan of Art Deco, or simply a fan of history, Fair Park in Dallas is certainly a worthwhile place to visit. Even if you go when there aren't any events going on, like you've probably guessed from how empty my pictures are, the buildings and artwork are still impressive to behold. And thanks to its designation as a historic landmark, we can be assured that Fair Park would be preserved like a time capsule of the 1930s for future generations to admire. If you've made it to the end of this video, thanks for watching. Seriously, thank you. I know this is an obscure topic that few people will probably find interesting, but this kind of stuff interests me, and hopefully you learned something new in this video. I hope to make more videos in the future about other topics that don't get the attention they deserve, but should, and maybe some topics that are better known. I've also been messing around a lot with my audio mixing on Audacity to try and improve the quality of the audio. I know the audio quality and consistency in some of my videos has been lacking, so if any of you audio engineers have some tips for me, I'd be very thankful. Anyways, thanks again, and have a nice day.